Yo, welcome and happy Halloween, all y'all. Happy spooky season. Happy debate season. Welcome to another episode of the Huddle Chat Sports Show, aka THC Sports. I'm your host, Dallas, aka Indo is my Nindo. Of course, make sure to follow me on social media at Indo is my Nindo. Boy, am I excited about today's episode. And if you don't know about the Huddle Chat Sports, what we like to do around here is we like to plow new ground. We like to tackle those players, storylines, and teams that just don't get as much national attention as they should. And as well, you may have already caught the THC portion of the Huddle Chat Sports. Disclaimer, cannabis, marijuana is not going to be the focus or really a focus at all of this podcast. I started this podcast and infused it with cannabis because it's hard to deny the avalanche that is cannabis and how quickly it's coming into day-to-day life and into sports as we know it. We're seeing athletes past and present come out about cannabis use during their careers and how it's helped them positively. We look back on players like Ricky Williams, who ended up retiring pretty much for the use of cannabis because of his own mental issues. You look at the fighters like the Diaz brothers, who openly use cannabis during their workouts. Athletes and other UFC fighters are starting to use CBD and other THC products in their recovery process, in their therapy, and in their day-to-day life. And you're starting to see leagues like the NFL and the MLB not even test for cannabis anymore and starting to allow their players that form of therapy and that form of medication. So if you don't consume, that's perfectly fine. But out here in Colorado where I live, we consume. And of course, like I said, this is going to be a cannabis-infused, cannabis-powered, yet sports-driven podcast/talk show. So of course, while we talk about the sports and the big topics, we gotta light it up. But first, let's kick it to Eric for our intro. Go ahead and spin him up, Eric. Let's get lit.
Like as soon as you click on the video, it's and then marijuana title cards with smoke coming up. It's like
I just wanna know how you feel. Tell me, am I doing it right? I may be covered in cat hair, but I still smell good. Baby, let me know, how do I like it, my do-rag? Don't lie to me, let me ride.
Now, the first thing I want to dive into, and of course we've talked about it a lot over the last little bit because it's hard to deny what just happened. The Los Angeles Lakers just won the 17th title in franchise history. And congratulations to LeBron. Congratulations to the Los Angeles Lakers. Of course, like as you've heard me say before, I'm taking nothing from the Los Angeles Lakers. If you watched my last episode, I believe that we shouldn't be giving LeBron any extra credit. We shouldn't even really be giving this title an asterisk whatsoever. But you can't deny that this title was easier for the Lakers and easier as a whole to win. So I don't want to hear none of that extra credit bullshit for LeBron. As a matter of fact, LeBron won the finals MVP, and me personally, I just don't think he deserved it. There was somebody else on the team who deserved that finals MVP even more than LeBron James. And honestly, if you're a sports fan, you probably are because you're watching my podcast right now. You know exactly who I'm talking about. Anthony Davis, the eyebrow himself, should have been the finals MVP, not LeBron James. And here's why. The fact of the matter is, Anthony Davis proved that he was the best player on the Lakers throughout this entire finals, throughout this entire playoffs. But even more so in the finals, did Anthony Davis take that next step and prove that he was the most valuable player on the Lakers. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I can definitely say I feel that the Los Angeles Lakers could have and would have been in this same exact position and won this series just as handily if LeBron James was not on this squad. But I cannot say the same about Anthony Davis. If you remove Anthony Davis, if Anthony Davis takes an injury at any point in this finals, the Lakers may not have the opportunities that they have. If he takes any serious injury during these playoffs, they don't potentially beat Denver. They don't potentially beat those other teams that they got through in this playoffs, let alone get through the Miami Heat. Anthony Davis is the most dominant defensive player alive right now. And I will argue that with anybody. Anthony Davis proved that over and over in this playoffs and in this finals that his defense can be counted on, and he is the piece that glued together this Los Angeles defense throughout the entire playoffs, and like I said, in the finals even more so. And the defensive side of the ball is really where the Los Angeles Lakers seriously took off, and that's what gave them that upper hand on those teams that they played. And the key piece of that defensive unit was Anthony Davis. I mean, let's just look at Game 4 real quick. One of the best defensive games in finals history. Coming off of Jimmy Butler's 40-point game performance in Game 3, they switched Anthony Davis over to Jimmy Butler and guarded him down, locked him down, and Jimmy Butler was flustered all night. Not just Jimmy Buckets, but the Miami offense was flustered for the entire night and honestly the rest of the series after that point. I mean, Anthony Davis is uniquely equipped. He smothers big men at the rim, and he can also close out those big shooters. But not just on the defensive side of the ball is Anthony Davis making that impact. As a matter of fact, he was a hyper-efficient scorer throughout this entire finals, and like I said again, the entire playoffs. He's scoring from 3 levels. Through 19 games, he shoots 67% from the field, over 40% from three-point line, hits over 90% of his free throws. His one-on-one scoring package is absolutely unstoppable. He shoots over the small men, and he can beat the slower defenders to the basket every time. And then you add in his just only getting better at the three-point range and extending his range, it's only making him deadlier. I mean, let's just break down his individual performances. In Game 1, 34 points and 9 rebounds, and shuts down Goran Dragic and Bam Adebayo. And his defense can't be ignored. He has 3 blocks in that first game. Game 2, he shoots 15 of 20 from the field. 32 points, 14 rebounds. The Los Angeles Lakers scored 21 points alone that game off second chance points. Look at those 14 rebounds that Anthony Davis put up, and 9 of them were offensive. Like I said, the Lakers put up 21 points on second chance baskets alone. And then we all know about Game 3, and like I said, Game 4 was one of the best defensive performances in finals history. Shuts down Jimmy Butler after that 40-point game, and not only does that, he's still able to put up 22 points while defending the most dominant scorer on the Miami Heat. Because at the end of the day, this argument here is not who is the best Los Angeles Laker. It's who had the biggest impact on the finals and on the not just the playoffs, but on the finals specifically. And at the end of the day, LeBron James and Anthony Davis were putting up similar numbers. But what Anthony Davis was doing on the defensive side of the ball, plus you add in the fact that LeBron James has a higher percentage of usage because he's taking the ball across the court as the point guard / point forward of the team. So Anthony Davis has to make most of his numbers without the ball in his hands for the big part of the game. Like I said, LeBron James and Anthony Davis put up very similar numbers, but Anthony Davis played better in the finals. He was better on defense. He was the true X factor for the Los Angeles Lakers throughout this finals. LeBron won the MVP, but Anthony Davis had a much bigger impact. And that's why I believe Anthony Davis should have won that finals MVP. I said it from about Game 3 that if Anthony Davis didn't win the MVP, LeBron James would have robbed him. I mean, I'm not upset that they picked LeBron. LeBron played good basketball, but the fact of the matter is the most valuable player to the Los Angeles Lakers in this finals was Anthony Davis. Now, the next topic that I want to talk about, I really want to move over to the NFL, of course, because NBA is over for the foreseeable future, so we won't really be doing too much more talking about basketball for the next little bit until things start coming up. We don't even know when the NBA season is supposed to get kicked off again. But I got into an argument with my friends the other day, and it actually seriously gave me the topic for the episode today, because there was a chart. Long story short, I said that Patrick Mahomes is pretty much going to be the best quarterback of all time. And I got a lot of lashing for. I got a lot of backlash. I got a lot of negative feedback on it, and it surprised me. And honestly, it's surprising me that not as many people are talking about Patrick Mahomes this season, just because the Chiefs are good, they're doing well. It's nothing that we don't expect. We would only be talking about the Chiefs if they weren't performing well, but they're playing exactly like we expect them to. They are who we thought they were. But that raises the question today, is Patrick Mahomes good enough to be the next GOAT, to be the GOAT when everything is all said and done? I mean, I think it's almost a foregone conclusion. If you're just looking at the quarterback position, and if the quarterback position was based on just physical abilities alone, Patrick Mahomes may already be the greatest quarterback that ever played football. But it takes more than that to be a great quarterback, and I'm telling you that Patrick Mahomes has the tools in his tool belt to become the next greatest quarterback of all time. I mean, let's just be honest with each other. Very few quarterbacks in NFL history possess the physical ability as well as the mental prowess that Patrick Mahomes brings into the league. And this motherfucker is only 23 years old. First things first, there are not many, and some would argue there are not any throws that Patrick Mahomes can't make. When you're looking at a good quarterback needs to be able to throw well off balance. He needs to be able to throw well under pressure. He needs to be able to throw well in and out of the pocket, on the move. And Patrick Mahomes can do it all, and he's proven it all to us just in his young career already. I mean, Patrick Mahomes has proven to us that he can throw a heater with accuracy across the field, deep downfield, while off platform, going across his body and accurately hit a defender or a wide receiver going in the opposite direction. And he's proven that to us before. I mean, look at how easily he just pulls those sidearm passes out of his back pocket. I remember one specifically against the Colts in the playoffs when he had really nothing virtually open. The pocket's closing around him, and he somehow sidearms a pass around an offensive lineman to a crossing Travis Kelce in the middle of the field. It's a big first down and a big key play on the game. And it was one of those where you were just like, man, you can't even be mad at that. You can't be mad at your defense. They did everything that they could. And this man he's just talented. He's just different. I mean, Patrick Mahomes has even shown us he can make throws with his left hand if shit gets bad enough. He can fool defenses with his eyes alone. He's mastered that no-look pass. And he's shown us before he can avoid defenders in the pocket while keeping his eyes downfield, but only keeping his eyes downfield to distract the defense, because he's not throwing it over here. He's actually throwing it over here while making the safeties go over here with his eyes, and he's just got that talent. There's sometimes shit like that you just can't teach, and he's got that already at 23 years old. He has the requisite speed, strength, agility to avoid defenders in the pocket, and he's agile enough to be elusive in and out of the pocket and escape that pressure while staying calm and looking downfield and maintaining that quarterback calmness, that coolness, that collectivity, and still able to make those passes downfield. I mean, he's already checked so many of the required boxes to be a potential greatest of all time. But a quarterback's greatness isn't just determined by his physical abilities. It's not just determined by him alone. There are many quarterbacks that have shown us, like the Aaron Rodgers of the world, that it doesn't matter how good you are. You gotta have good support. You gotta have a good supporting cast. You gotta have good coaching. And thankfully for Patrick Mahomes, he's been blessed with that in his young career. Andy Reid is a quarterback whisperer, and honestly, a lot of Patrick Mahomes' early credit is going to be given to Andy Reid because how often that Andy Reid has proven to us that he can take a quarterback and make them play above their quality, above their own level. And it's going to be he's going to be able to change. Patrick Mahomes is going to be able to change the perspective on Andy Reid because Andy Reid doesn't have the best looking playoff record. Andy Reid has been proven to not be the best game manager. And things like that is where Patrick Mahomes is going to be able to help change the narrative on his head coach. And so that coach pairing between Andy Reid and also his general manager, Veach, is going to be able to, has got to be able to support him as well. And at the current moment, he's been blessed with just a luxury of skilled players that are all around him, and they all cost a high price tag. With Sammy Watkins, Tyreek, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, luckily is young at the current moment. They just signed Le'Veon Bell. They got Kelce, so they've got some really good skilled players, but they all come with a high price tag. And that's not always going to be the case for Patrick Mahomes. But to start off, I mean, he's been blessed. I mean, but let's just be real. Like I said, he needs the support like Tom Brady had with Bill Belichick. I mean, Tom Brady's success is almost impossible without Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots staff and what they were able to put around him on certain years. And like I said, he's going to need that help from Andy Reid. He's going to need that help from Brett Veach, the general manager, and the Kansas City Chiefs over the next decade or two. I mean, and there may be rough patches. I mean, I'm not saying that his career is coming up to be a perfect thing. There may be rough patches, and eventually those rough patches may be what disqualifies Patrick Mahomes from the greatest of all time conversation. But like I said, there are plenty of quarterbacks from before that we've seen that have plenty of potential, that have looked like the next best thing. Let's look at Cam Newton. Let's look at Colin Kaepernick. Let's look at Carson Wentz. And just as quickly as we were all looking at that quarterback like he may be the next great thing, he may be the next best thing, at least of his era, they just as quickly regress. They regress significantly as well. Like I said, look at those quarterbacks that I named. So everything is not laid out perfectly for Patrick Mahomes. He could regress significantly. You can't expect that production from him all the time. But as previously mentioned, he has the luxury of a bevy of skilled players already. And, you know, time will only tell how long those players can stay and what players they can bring onto the squad. But he also has already signed his 10-year contract. So you're looking at probably avoiding any issues like Andrew Luck or Barry Sanders, players that look like they could have been the greatest of their era or a great of all time that ended up retiring early, surprisingly to the entire world and shocking the world. So Pat's already locked in for 10 years. He's already got the skill players. He's already got the support. If Patrick Mahomes can put the things together that are in his control, which are going to be his leadership, which is going to be his mental and physical ability and readiness, his work ethic. If he can combine those factors that he can't control and the factors that he can control and the factors that he can't control all go in his favor, i.e. the coaching, i.e. the staff that gets put around him, i.e. injury potentially, knock on wood, then and Patrick Mahomes can put together a few Super Bowls in his career, Patrick Mahomes has no issue coming out and being the next greatest of all time. Of course, only time will tell. Like I said, he's got to put a few things together. A few things have to work right for Patrick Mahomes, and he's got to win a couple Super Bowls to be considered in that conversation. But I think Patrick Mahomes has everything that he absolutely needs already at 23 years old to be considered the next greatest of all time, especially if everything goes well for him in his career. Now, for today's last topic, I want to cover one quick thing. Okay, I want to go back to that contenders or pretenders question. And we're targeting a team today that has really been shocking the world, and everybody doesn't really know how to attack it. But I don't see a lot of people really talking about it, maybe because they've been so surprising, or maybe because everybody doesn't expect about it. But my question is, a few weeks ago, Nick Foles gets named the starter of the Chicago Bears. And we saw what Nick Foles did previously when being named the starter in midseason for the Philadelphia Eagles. He takes them to the playoffs, the Super Bowl, and a championship and wins the Super Bowl MVP at the same time. Can Nick Foles do it again? Can Big Nick do it again?
And I do it again. Bop, bop, bop.
What is the potential that the Chicago Bears can actually make the playoffs and make a run? I mean, the first thing when you think about Chicago, you're thinking about Mac Daddy, their defensive leader. You're thinking about that elite defensive unit that they have. They have a defense that can create turnovers. They have one of the best defenses in the league. They have Akeem Hicks and Khalil Mack just straight ruining games for the other team, straight causing problems for the other team. I mean, Khalil Mack killed my Indianapolis Colts. We had an injured Anthony Costanzo on the left tackle. They put Khalil Mack over there, and Khalil Mack whoops that ass all game long. Luckily, we pulled that game out. But honestly, Khalil Mack seriously could have ruined that game for the Indianapolis Colts. Good thing our defense was a little bit better. I'm not saying that Phillip Rivers did anything for us, but good thing our defense was a little bit better. Because the big issue that the Chicago Bears are going to have is, yes, they have one of the best defensive units in the NFL. Yes, they have an elite defense that can create turnovers and can change games. But the biggest problem that the Chicago Bears run into is their offense is just downright putrid. I mean, let's look at the meat and potatoes, the big men. The offensive line just straight up disgusts me. They can't block for the pass. They can't block for the run and open holes for Montgomery, and just, I mean, they couldn't stop anything. They couldn't stop Mitchell High School's defensive line at the current moment. It's sad to see. They rival the Dallas Cowboys for the worst offensive line in the NFL. That's just plain facts. And of course they have taken injuries, which just has made their offensive line worse. I mean, when you look at their rushing game, since they've lost Tariq Cohen, it's just been putrid. I mean, they only put Cordell Patterson in the game when they're running the ball with Cordell Patterson. And it's not like defenses have picked up on that. I'm just a aspiring sports analyst. I can't even call myself an official sports analyst. I'm only talking to a couple people on YouTube, and I can see it. You put Cordell Patterson in the game, you're running with Cordell Patterson. It's plain and simple fact with the Chicago Bears at the current moment. Their offensive play calling is bad. But they're rushing right now. They are dead last in the NFL on rushing attacks. They're 32nd in the league for rushing. And when you're looking at an offensive line that can't protect the quarterback, and you have a rushing attack that is worst in the NFL, what can you seriously expect from a quarterback, whether it be Mitch Trubisky or Nick Foles? Because you really can't expect much from them whatsoever. I mean, Nick Foles himself has come out and told media in production meetings and stuff that when he hears play calls come through in his headset, he sits there and ponders to himself and says, Nick, we're not going to have enough time for this 5-step drop, for this 7-step drop. The offensive line isn't going to give me enough time to throw it to that route when I need to. So he himself is already saying, man, you're calling plays and I already know it's going to fail because our offensive line sucks. And that's just terrible coming from your starting quarterback. You look at Mitchell Trubisky and Nick Foles, really neither one of them played better than the other. Mitchell Trubisky went undefeated, at least when he was the Chicago Bears quarterback. But the problem is, the plain and simple fact is, Nick Foles and Mitch Trubisky rank bottom 10 in QBR among qualified quarterbacks. Quarterbacks that have thrown a certain amount of passes. I'm not counting every quarterback that's ever taken a snap. Ben DiNucci ain't getting counted at the current moment. But they rank bottom 10. Both of them. Not combined, both of them make up 2 of the bottom 10 quarterbacks in the league in QB rating. You combine the fact that they have 2 below average quarterbacks, put behind the worst, arguably the worst offensive line in the league. They've had 4 consecutive games of less than 65 yards rushing. Luckily for the Chicago Bears, they've had a fairly easy schedule. Luckily for the Chicago Bears, again, of their next 8 games coming up, only 3 of them seem like potential challenges. They got the Tennessee Titans and they got the Green Bay Packers twice. I think the Green Bay Packers are obviously going to win that division. The Chicago Bears at the current moment are sitting like a half game behind. They're 5-2. The Packers are 5-1. They're sitting a half game behind that division lead. And it's only because their defense. But when it comes down to it, like I said, those 3 games, Tennessee, and those 2 games against Green Bay, those are going to be tough games for the Chicago Bears. But luckily for them, the other 5 games don't seem to be too big of a challenge. They got the Jaguars, the Texans, the Lions. They've got some easier matchups coming up. But the biggest problem is that with the Green Bay Packers seeming like they're going to probably win this division, they're really competing for a wild card spot at the current moment. And that NFC is not the division to be competing for the wild card spot. I mean, let's just face it. Look at the NFC West right now. The NFC West very likely may bring up 3 teams from that division for the playoffs. It's very likely. The worst team in that division is the 49ers, and they got 4 wins. Every team in that division is above 500. It's crazy. They're the exact opposite of the NFC East. Oh yeah, let me forget. Somebody has to win the NFC East, no matter how terrible all the teams are, no matter how many teams may get screwed out of a spot, because somebody has to win the NFC East. So there's 4 spots right there. You look at New Orleans and Tampa Bay coming out of that same division, both looking like either one may win the division, the other one's going to make a wild card spot. You look at Green Bay going to win that division. So all of the spots are looking like they're pretty much taken up in the NFC, and that's going to be the Chicago Bears' issue. They're going to be a above average team. They're going to be a playoff caliber team, but they aren't going to be good enough to be better than those playoff teams. They're playoff contenders, but I don't think they make the playoffs. And if they make the playoffs, they can't compete with those defensive units of those playoff teams. Look at the teams that are at the top at the current moment and tell me how many of them don't have elite defensive units. Especially looking at the NFC and the units that the Chicago Bears would have to match up with in that wild card game. So I really, like I said, I think the Chicago Bears, they're gonna be a good team. In every sense of the word, a good team. They're not gonna be a great team, they're gonna be a contender. But they're not gonna be able to contend, they're not gonna be able to beat those big teams, those big money teams, those playoff teams. And with the Green Bay Packers, unless they can top the Green Bay Packers, they don't have a chance to get into the playoffs with how good that NFC is looking. Plain and simple fact. So as far as contenders or pretenders, I think they are contenders, but let's not pretend like they're Super Bowl contenders. They're playoff contenders. But ladies and gentlemen, again, I can't thank you enough for tuning in to today's episode of the Huddle Chat Sports. That's going to be all the smoke that I got for you today. Again, like I said, we covered over some big topics today, and I really appreciate you sticking with me through it all. And if you really liked my content, please make sure you smash that like button. That like button helps me out so much. It helps me out even more than if you were to share it out to your friends. And please, if you have friends that you think will be interested into it, share it out to them. I'm not saying don't do it, but make sure if you like my content, hit that like button for me. It does me a huge favor, more than you can even understand. Also, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscription button. Make sure you hit that notifications bell. I mean, at this point, if you watch this whole episode and you're not subscribed to the channel, I mean, are you just trying to hurt my feelings at this point? Why you do this to me? I love you. Why don't you bring the same back to me? But again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I'm your host, Dallas, aka Indo is my Nindo. Make sure you follow me on social media: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, of course YouTube. Indo is my Nindo, spelled like it sounds. Of course, make sure you hit that notifications bell. Stay notified. We're coming out with weekly episodes at this point. I've got topics coming at y'all every week at this point, and I'm coming at y'all hot and ready like a Little Caesars pizza. But again, be looking for them weekly episodes. We got real hot topics coming up. And again, happy Halloween. Be safe out there. Stay warm out there. I mean, bundle up. Enjoy it safely. Socially distanced. But the most important thing, like I said, stay safe out there. Thank you again for spending some time with me, for watching my episode, and joining the sesh today. I'm your boy, Indo is my Nindo. And I got to get out of here, baby. I'll see you next week.